Welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we are going to be discussing my top 5 potential landing spots for JJ Watt. So let's get started. Now, for those who are new to subscribing to my channel, thank you to you. For those who already subscribed to my channel, again, thank you to you as well. Be sure for both of you to turn on the bell notifications so you get notified when I go live or when I upload content. Again, I'm looking at my analytics and I'm noticing 83% of you guys have yet to subscribe to my channel but still watch all my videos. So do me a solid, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your screen and stay up to date on all things Beast in real time. Alright, so again, thank you for everyone. I appreciate all the comments that I've been receiving on all my videos. If you notice, I respond to every single comment, and I do that because we're trying to grow the BEASTwriter family, and in doing so, I feel like the best way to do that is engaging with you. That's always how I've always done business. For those who've been following me since, since I started covering the NFL media back in 2012, you guys know that's how I've always been, and things have not changed years later, right? That's just how I do things. And for me, even before covering the NFL media, I would respond to people or leave comments and they wouldn't respond. So it's kind of like, what's the point of me following you when you're not even giving me, not like the spotlight, so to speak, but like I'm one of your engaged readers and I comment on your stuff, but yet you don't want to take the time to get back to me because you think you're on your high horse and you're too good. No, that's not how I do things, man. I'm all about being humble. And again, without you guys, I wouldn't be in the position I am today. So thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I know a lot of you guys on Twitter have been asking me what's going on with JJ Watt. What's my take? What's my analysis? And I'm just going to break it down. For those who don't know, again, JJ Watt formally requested his release, and he was granted that by mutually parting ways. That's a term that's been thrown around the NFL media, I don't know, for the better half of the last year and a half now. And I have no idea why people say mutually part ways, even though it is mutually parting ways. Even when players or coaches get fired, they always call it like mutually parting ways when, I don't know, it's just weird. This is weird. Anyways, JJ Watt is on the open market. He's free to sign with any other NFL team. And that's where we stand. Now, let's peel back another layer of the onion and get to the core. Exactly who is JJ Watt? And the reason I'm saying this, I know all you guys, or the majority of you guys know who he is, but there's some who don't. So I want to tailor the masses, right? So let's go ahead and break it down who JJ Watt is. JJ Watt is a 2011 first round pick, drafted number 11 overall out of the University of Wisconsin. And he wasn't really a double-digit sack artist. He did rack up tackles for loss, but he wasn't really that go-to guy where you can look at him and be like, man, this guy's going to be a game changer type of a edge presence. Now, that's why he was drafted number 11 overall, because the potential was there. People saw potential in that, but again, potential doesn't mean much if you don't live up to the hype. I mean, I think you can talk about that, and we can have a separate podcast on that. Potentially great players who never panned out, right? So in this case, it turns out that JJ Watt's potential did exceed his ceiling, and now we know why, and he is a hot commodity now, right? So again, let's look at JJ Watt, right? So JJ Watt was released and granted his release. And again, if you watched my earlier podcast on this, in any Deshaun Watson trade value, I always brought up JJ Watt's name as a potential chess piece in that blockbuster deal, especially when it came to the Carolina Panthers. You Carolina Panthers fans that follow me, you guys know what I'm talking about, where I listed edge Brian Burns as a potential competitive edge in making a Deshaun Watson sweepstakes type of a deal. And the reason I say that is because, again, JJ Watt was owed $17.5 million, but none of that was guaranteed. So if you're GM Nick Caserio and you need to trim around $17 million because you're in the red that much money, it's easy to wipe your hands clean of JJ Watt and start fresh. Now, whether that be through trade or a release, that remains to be seen. But I did point out that he would probably likely not be on the team one way or the other. That's why I mentioned Brian Burns as a potential chess piece, because again, Brian Burns is a top 10 edge rusher, in my opinion, still on a rookie deal. So in a deal where you're giving up your franchise quarterback, you got to look at it from a GM perspective and Nick Caserio's perspective and say, hey, look, if I'm giving up my top franchise quarterback, I don't want the heat from the NFL media, because there's no guarantee that the first round draft picks that I'm going to get in return are going to pan out, because it's based on what? The P word, potential, right? So potentially, yeah, they can pan out, but potentially not. So I want to get some leverage in making this deal to where at least I get something guaranteed in return. Brian Burns is a guarantee. We know what we're getting with Brian Burns. We're getting a top 10 edge rusher, still on a rookie deal, who has Pro Bowl potential, right? So Brian Burns, double-digit sack artist year in and year out. He is a guy who is going to be on that level. He has yet to do it consistently, but he's right there, getting 9 sacks, I believe it's 9.5 sacks, whatever the number was last year. But he is a guy who, to me, would transform that Texans defense and be a cornerstone for the franchise. Now, I know Panthers fans are looking at this and be like, oh man, there's no way we're giving up Brian Burns. Yeah, well, you're going to have to give up something and gain something. If you're getting top 5 franchise quarterback in return, giving up Brian Burns is a likely scenario. I mean, Nick Caserio is not going to want magic beans in return for giving up his franchise quarterback. You can't just say draft capital and that'll be it. No, he wants something guaranteed in return, and getting Brian Burns, a top 10 edge rusher, on a rookie deal would make financial sense, not only from a need standpoint, but also financially. Again, J.J. Watt's gone, and you're going to have to fill that need. Why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone by trading away Deshaun Watson, getting draft capital and draft flexibility in return, and also picking up Brian Burns? Just saying. All right? But getting back to J.J. Watt in this particular podcast, he has 101 career sacks, right? And over the course of his career, and if you're looking at it, that's a lot of production from a sack pass rushing standpoint. Now you take it a step further and you look at it from a standpoint of his accolades. Well, the guy is a 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year. That's Aaron Donald status. Furthermore, he's a 5-time first-team All-Pro. So you know what you're getting with J.J. Watt if he were to sign on your team. Now the question remains, where's the best fit? What's the likely destination spots for his services, right? So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that. But aside from his accolades, I always like taking it a step further and looking at both sides of the story, right? I'm painting a picture with my story here in all my podcasts. Well, the story here in this particular scenario is J.J. Watt does have a history of injuries, right? He's injury prone, right? In 2015, what happened? He had a fractured hand and a pulled groin. So when you have those 2 injuries, he still was able to play a full 16-game schedule, but again, these injuries are starting to pile up. Then you take it a step further in 2016, right? He had back surgery for a herniated disc in his back. What does that tell you? Well, the guy had to miss some time there, 13 games to be exact, and then he comes back the following year, and then he misses, I believe it was 11 games. Let me look it up. I believe it was 11 games due to a leg fracture. Yeah. He missed 11 games due to a leg fracture in 2017. And then in 2018, he had a 2019, excuse me. In 2019, 2 years ago, he had a torn pec muscle that forced him to miss an additional 8 games. So he missed 13 games, right, in 2016. He missed 11 games in 2017. And then 2 years later, in 2019, he missed another 8 games. If you're doing the math, that's 32 games missed over the course of the last 5 years. And those injuries are starting to pile up for an aging player. He's 32 years old. So if you're looking at it from a GM perspective, and then you're looking at J.J. Watt, what he has done in the past, you're going to need to do your risk analysis on that. What's the cost-benefit analysis of bringing a guy in like J.J. Watt? Now, J.J. Watt has already run on record saying he wants to go and play for a Super Bowl contender. Understandably so. He's at the bleak of his career, right? He's no longer the prime of his career, but you know what you're getting with the J.J. Watt. You're getting a guy who can produce double-digit sack numbers, and potentially he could have 1 or 2 years left in him where he could be at all-pro status. That's what you're getting with J.J. Watt. But then again, the downside is you're banking on that success as opposed to the injury history he has been accustomed to over the last 5 years. So to say that he doesn't come with red flags, you'd be doing yourself a disservice, right? So with that being said, I'm going to break down 5 potential fits for J.J. Watt, and let's start with the most logical, or the most intriguing, I should say, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers are definitely in play for a ring, which makes him a logical choice or a logical target in Pittsburgh. Also, obviously, we know T.J. Watt and his brother Derek Watt both play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and if you have all 3 Watt brothers on the Pittsburgh Steelers, that would create a storyline for the ages. Because I don't think that's ever happened where 3 brothers played on the same team. If there is, please shoot a comment in the comment section, but I don't believe there is. And when you take that a step further, again, he's 32 years old, right? So one thing that JJ Watt is not, he's not scheme dependent, right? He can play in a 3-4 base or a 4-3 front, right? But this is where it gets interesting, right? We all know what JJ Watt brings to the table. Like, everyone knows what JJ Watt, I like to say because he always bat down passes at the line of scrimmage. We all know what JJ Watt brings to the table. But the team already has tight end Stephon Tuitt on one side and defensive end Cam Hayward on the other. In my grading system, if you follow me on Twitter, I run my own grading system. Not PFF, I don't count that. I actually grade every single snap. And I graded the Steelers every single snap on the defense side of the football. And and Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt both graded out as first-team All-Pro selections. In fact, I'm part of the Pro Football Writers Association, and both those players had my vote for first-team All-Pro. Although Cam Hayward was a second-team All-Pro, and Stephon Tuitt didn't even make the squad. That remains to be seen why. I'm kind of iffy on that. I mean, I know Myles Garrett was up there, but Myles Garrett did not compare to Stephon Tuitt. And if you're looking at it from an edge presence, even as an IDL, interior defensive line presence, Stephon Tuitt was the better all-around player. I'm just saying. All right, but getting back to what Stephon Tuitt brings to the table, if a guy like J.J. Watt comes into play, you can really kick in Stephon Tuitt to play the nose tackle and have him beef up a little bit. And people are saying, oh, why would they do that? Well, nose tackle Tyson Alualu, who was also playing at a first-team All-Pro level, is a free agent. So there's no guarantee that he is going to come back. And if you were to look at the future behavior, you have to base it on past behavior. Why did Tyson Alualu tackle on the nose tackle position in 2020? It was because Javon Hargrave bolted for the Philadelphia Eagles, and so they moved defensive end Tyson Alualu, a backup defense end, into the starting nose tackle role. Well, if you bring in a guy like J.J. Watt, who may not be financially invested in himself because of the fact he already made his money and just wants a ring, he would be willing to take a pay cut and a family hometown discount in order to play alongside his brothers, while then manning the other spot that Stephon Tuitt would be in, and Tuitt can then slide inside to the nose guard technique. All right, that's just something that I want to point out because, again, for that to take place, if you have Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, and J.J. Watt, oh my gosh, with T.J. Watt on the outside, it didn't even matter. Bud Dupree's on the other side because we already know what Alex Highsmith can do from a pass rushing standpoint, so you're already set there. I don't know why Mock's having the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Zaven Collins or some other pass rusher. I think they're going to go offensive lineman right now based on draft position, or running back, Najee Harris. So, with that being said, man, yeah, it'd be a defensive front seven that just got a whole lot better. Because remember, Devin Bush had a torn ACL, Robert Spillane filled in admirably, and you already have the pieces in place to get it done up front from a defense standpoint. Defense wins championships. We all saw what happened with the Tampa Bay Bucks. So that's why I think it's a good fit for him. Again, would he take a family discount in order to play for Pittsburgh? That remains to be seen. But Big Ben only has 1 year left, maybe 2 at the most. And with Marquise Pouncey already announcing his retirement, you know the Steelers roster is almost in a rebuild mode. Okay, but if not the Packers, let's look at the Green Bay Packers. If not the Steelers, let's look at the Green Bay Packers, right? And before I get started on the Green Bay Packers, can you name one starting defensive end in that 3-4 defense? I'll give you them. It's Dean Lowry and Tyler Lancaster. How the heck did the Packers go to 2 straight NFC Championship games with those guys manning the defensive end positions in the 3-4 front? That's crazy. And to take it a step further, peeling back another layer of the onion to get to the core, the 2 players only combined for 3 sacks last year. 3! I believe J.J. Watt had 5 or 5.5, whatever that number was. So, wow. He would be a huge upgrade for them, right? So the need is there. Now, let's take a step further. Again, I like really pounding. Keep pounding. Using the Panthers. Let's keep pounding. Let's chip at it from another perspective, right? Let's really chip at it here. And if you take it a step further, well, J.J. Watt is from Wisconsin, right? He's from Pewaukee, Wisconsin. So would he take a hometown discount to play with the likes of Aaron Rodgers, who again, just like Big Ben, is kind of at the tail end of his career, but still producing at a high rate, at a Pro Bowl, All-Pro high rate? Would he be willing to take a pay cut? Because obviously the Packers are in the red, $19 million, so they're going to have to free up some money there, which I'll get into in a little bit in detail. Well, I'll do it now. They're in the red, right? So that was a horrible transition, but the reason why I bring this up now instead of later in the podcast, because I might as well just bring it up. The Packers are in the red, $19 million right now. They need to free up cap space. Well, if you notice that the news that was just reported, David Bakhtiari, who just inked a long-term deal, a $105 million deal to be exact, over the course of his contract, he just recently agreed to change his $11 million roster bonus for the upcoming season and convert that to a signing bonus spread over the course of the life of the contract. So what that does is it frees up cap savings of $8.3 million. Now in doing so, why would the news come out shortly after J.J. Watt was released? I'm not saying that wasn't in the works before that news broke that J.J. Watt was released by the Texans, but if you're connecting the dots, kind of makes sense, right? It kind of makes sense. Now, for them to do it this early on, it tells me that they're really in play for J.J. Watt's service, and they're going to make a strong push for it. And I bet Aaron Rodgers is like, bro, you got to do something, man. We all saw what happened in his post-season press conference shortly after they're eliminated from the playoffs, and why they didn't go for it for fourth and down. Didn't go for it on fourth down, and you can just see the look on his face. Is like, it wasn't my decision, bro. It wasn't my decision. Straight face, stone cold face, and I guarantee he's telling GM, good accounts, hey bro, like we need to get JJ Watt. David Bakhtiari, man, let's convert your freaking money into a signing bonus so we can free up cap space to go get JJ Watt, and let's go get this ring, man. We're right there. 2 years in a row, one game short of making it to the Super Bowl. He can take us over the top because we are 1 or 2 players away. Let's go ahead and make that move. So that's why I think it'd be a nice fit for J.J. Watt. Also, his wife also plays for the Chicago women's national soccer team, so he'd be a lot closer to her. So it really makes sense for J.J. Watt to take this deal potentially and go there if they were to offer him a contract, right? So again, time will tell how that plays out, but that's something that we all have to take into account. If not the Packers, right? Let's say he doesn't go to the Packers. Let's say he doesn't go to the Steelers. My next and number 3 spot is the Indianapolis Colts. GM Chris Ballard, in my opinion, is a top 10 GM, right? He's not afraid to pull a trigger and go after big names, right? He did it with Frank Gore. He did it with DeForest Buckner. Did it with Phillip Rivers, right? So did it with Justin Houston, who's now unrestricted free agent. So the need for a defensive lineman is there, especially at edge. With that being said, why not go after a guy like J.J. Watt, who could be the missing piece? You look at it from a defensive front 7 standpoint. And again, we all saw what happened with the Bucs. You have J.J. Watt, DeForest, Buckner, and Darius Leonard. Arguably the top 3 players at their respective positions on that defensive front 7. Whew. And you're looking at a top 3 defense if Watt can stay healthy. Now that's the X factor. Can Watt stay healthy? But I mean, that's an X factor, right? I know my man JP likes it. We talked about this in the comment section on all my podcasts, and I know JP would think it's a logical scenario because we talked about Chandler Jones, his guy. And that's for a later podcast I'm going to be doing. I know JP and I have been discussing about what's going to happen with Chandler Jones, but who was also in the last year of his contract. But getting back to this particular one in J.J. Watt, why would Chris Ballard not make a play for J.J. Watt, or at least try to make a play for J.J. Watt, when they're a quarterback away from actually making a serious run out of it? Phillip Rivers retired. They're going to need a quarterback. But, of course, that domino has to take place first in order for them to even consider a guy like J.J. Watt, because there's no use getting a J.J. Watt if you don't have a quarterback. You need a quarterback in the NFL to win a Super Bowl. Just saying. Dual threat quarterback, most likely. But, hey, we all saw Tom Brady do it, and he's a pure pocket passer. But, again, Tom Brady's the greatest to ever do it. All right? But if not the Colts, okay, let's say that he doesn't go to the Colts, he doesn't go to the Steelers, he doesn't go to the Green Bay Packers. What about the Miami Dolphins? No one's bringing up the Miami Dolphins. And one of my league sources has told me the Miami Dolphins, don't be surprised if they make a play for him. Because again, if you look at the defensive line, in my opinion, the Miami Dolphins have the least amount of needs of any NFL football team. And they didn't even make the playoffs. They're borderline making the playoffs, bro. And they were just one or two players away from making a serious run. Now, the quarterback position is tough with Tua, right? And there's still unknowns about that. But if they were to land like a Deshaun Watson because of the draft capital that they have with 2 first-round draft picks, and then they pick up a J.J. Watt, you have to think that they're the front runners to win it all. You have to, because look at it from a defense standpoint. People who said that Javon Kinlaw wasn't struggling, take a look at my earlier podcast on why he was. Nose tackle Raekwon Davis, right? Who moved in from a 3-4 defensive end, slid into the nose tackle position once David Bakhtiari went down to an injury, and he performed at a Pro Bowl level in my grading system, was voted a PFWA All-Rookie Team, as well as PFF. So when you look at what he brings to the table and look at the defensive standpoint from up front, and what GM Chris Greer and Brian Flores are trying to accomplish from a cultural standpoint, bringing that do-your-job mentality over from the New England Patriots, it's a match made in heaven. You have Raekwon Davis manning in the middle. You already have Christian Wilkins coming from the edges, right? Along the defensive line as a 3-4 defensive end. Then you already got Emmanuel Ogbah. Well, if you bring in a J.J. Watt, that's an upgrade over Emmanuel Ogbah. And Emmanuel Ogbah is no slouch. He'd be a good rotational player along that defensive line. So now your defensive line just got a whole lot better, which makes the secondary look a whole lot better. Xavier Howard's a first-team All-Pro. You still got Byron Jones back there. So, I mean, the team is already set, and they just got a whole lot better where they were one game from making the playoffs. And I tweeted out earlier, if they were to make the playoffs, they're the one team that no NFL team wants to face in the playoffs. Because, again, they're scary, man. And if they get J.J. Watt, they're going to be a whole lot scarier. And again, the Dolphins were my dark horse Super Bowl pick, right? And if you're looking at it from a schematic standpoint, he would fit what Chris Greer and Brian Flores want in Miami. All right? So if Watt comes to Miami, again, there would be a top 5 defensive line in the NFL, in my opinion. And do your research on that, but if you were to argue with me on that, I'd say find a better defensive line. Again, if he goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they would have the best defensive line in all of football. Hands down the best. So J.J. Watt, what he brings to the table from a production standpoint, can't be denied. But what can be denied is the red flags I just mentioned with his injury history. That's something that's going to be something to look at, right? So if not the Pittsburgh Steelers, if not the Green Bay Packers, if not the Indianapolis Colts, if not the Miami Dolphins, my last choice, and 49ers Twitter is going to be all over me about this, because I'm going to say the 49ers. I'm going to say the 49ers, and here's the reason why. Here's the reason why, as I'm talking about. Here's the reason why, Ryan. No, here's the reason why. GM John Leonard screwed up the DeForest Buckner deal. Screwed that up. In hindsight, he did. In real time, I said he did. That's why you follow me, my spot-on predictions and analysis. All right? And he can redeem himself by getting a guy like J.J. Watt. Easily redeem himself. Why? Not throwing shade at Javon Kinlaw, but he is not the immediate answer as the team's 3 technique. I think it goes without saying that he's not. Now, I've said he has Pro Bowl potential, but for anyone, if you look at my Twitter receipts, I can repost retweets what people said, and they're like, oh no, Javon Kinlaw is better than DeForest Buckner. Okay, no. And then people say, oh, well, it makes sense because we couldn't afford DeForest Buckner. No. Check my Twitter and YouTube receipts. You could have got rid of Richard Sherman, wiped your hands clean of $12.9 million. Used that money to give him a front-loaded deal. He was already playing on a 5th-year contract, on a 5th-year option on the rookie deal. So you could re-sign him. Stop. Just follow me. It makes sense. But anyways, what's done is done, right? But J.J. Watt, GM John Lynch, you can redeem yourself by getting a guy like J.J. Swat. Because if you look at it from a schematic standpoint and you take a look at Eric Armstead, right? People saying he's out of position, he needs to kick inside. Okay, cool story. Kick him inside. Then you got J.J. Watt in the middle. How's that going for you? That's looking really strong, right? And then you already have Nick Bosa mopping up on the outside. DeForest's gone. He's already gone. Like, he's not even going to be on the team next year. Mark my words. And whoever that edge rusher is on the other side, whether it's Kerry Hyder Jr. or someone else, you already set 1, 2, 3 out of the 4 spots. And Mike Mayock made a good point. Before covering the Oakland Raiders as the team's GM, he covered, NFL Network as an analyst, and he said the interior pressure is more important than edge pressure because when you can collapse the pocket up front, it forces the quarterback to think logically on what he's going to do outside. It flushes plays outside, and it makes him think, whereas if it's the other way around, he can just run, he can climb up the pocket and do whatever. But if you push interiorly, is that even a word? If you push the interior of that offensive line up front with the defensive lineman in your face, we all saw what happens. Chris Jones can do it. DeForest Buckner can do it. Aaron Donald can do it. So I agree with Mike Mayock's assessment on that. So again, if you get a guy like J.J. Watt who can play the 3 technique, command the double teams, that'll free up Eric Armstead, who I know people are bearish on him, but I would say he's a good complementary role player, and he could produce double-digit sacks if you put a guy like J.J. Watt next to him. Now people can say, oh man, that's crazy to think about because we don't have money. Well, let's see how that plays out. But GM John Lynch, he can figure out cap situations and Parag Marate where they can kind of free up cap space in order to get a guy like J.J. Watt. Because if you get a guy like J.J. Watt and they draft a quarterback of the future, whether that be through the draft or somewhere else, because we all know what happens with Jimmy. I mean, we don't know what's going on with Jimmy G, but that would be a match made in heaven. Getting a guy like J.J. Watt would make Eric Armstead and everyone else better instantly. He would have a DeForest Buckner type of presence. And if you want to argue with me on that, so be it. And again, he wouldn't be a 3-4 defensive end because DeMeco Ryans and the Seahawks defense, they run a 4-3 cover 3. He would be kicked inside as a defensive tackle, manning the 3 technique, taking on the double teams, and still applying pressure up front consistently. There's no 49ers player on this roster that can do that since DeForest Buckner left. And that's not throwing shade. That's just watching the game film. And I don't have to tell you guys what to look for. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. And it's true. I'm just saying. So, would J.J. Watt be an upgrade over a guy like Javon Kinlaw, even though they drafted him in the first round? Yeah. But then again, you got to take it a step further, right? J.J. Watt can actually mentor Javon Kinlaw and help him mature as an NFL interior pressure guy. Because the lack on Javon Kinlaw is his lack of pass rush moves up front. He can bull rush the hell out of people, but then again, this isn't college. This is the NFL. And you're going to need an array of pass rush moves in order to get it done. Now, whether that's with the swim, whether that's a rip pull, whether it's an arm bar, it's all about leveraging technique, and the lowest man always wins. So when you do that and you can leverage your technique in the proper way where you're playing your splits and allowing the flow of the offensive linemen to come to you and use their momentum against them, that's something that J.J. Watt can teach. And if anything, you have to consider that, right? So with that being said, that's why I think that J.J. Watt would be a nice addition because, again, we don't know if Kerry Hyder is going to be there. We don't know if Jordan Willis is going to be there, right? Lynch needs to start making power moves. He does. The Rams got Matthew Stafford. The year before that, the Arizona Cardinals swung a deal for DeAndre Hopkins, the best wide receiver in the NFL. And then after that, the Rams got Jalen Ramsey. So that's all 3 teams making power moves for Pro Bowl type players. Level the playing field, John Lynch. Bite the bullet and take J.J. Watt and team him up with Eric Armstead. And then you have a pass rush up front that's formidable because you made the wrong mistake of trading DeForest Buckner. Well, that'll be it for today. I hope you liked what I had to say. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as I keep you up to date on all things Beast. I'll be running a podcast later on. People are asking about my 2021 NFL mock drafts, my analysis and insights on that. So be sure to subscribe to my channel, turn on the bell notifications because that's coming up. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. BEASTwriter out.